I went to a psychologist to receive support and it actually set me backwards. And I went, screw this, I don't want to become a psychologist. Autism is part of how she is and how her brain works, but we all see the world in different ways. I'll meet her where she's at, like she's not her label. Let's face it, our world's screwed up. Don't wait until your 40s and 50s to crash and burn and go, oh my gosh, I've lived all this time not being who I want to be. Work that out from a young age. Who do you want to be? What do you want to step into? Like, what drives you?
Marilou Coombe, welcome to Fully Fearless. What are you most passionate about in your life right now?
Hello, beautiful. How are you? What a beautiful question to start off with, hey? What am I most passionate about right now?
And you're so passionate. So.
I am very passionate, but I think what's really keeping me awake and waking me up in the morning early and getting me really excited is building up an academy for coaches that can help young people. So for quite a while now, I work with young people. I support young people with their mental health, with their mindset, with all sorts of things. But 2 years ago, when it was really needed the most, actually now almost 3 years ago, I got booked out within 3 months ahead, within 2 weeks of going back to my private practice. And it was just ridiculous. Like the kids really needed that support. They just weren't getting in mainstream. And I was like, I need to create more of me. But then I realized I actually just need to help people be themselves and help young people because nobody else can be me. So, yeah, I've built an academy over the last year and a half with coaches coming in and learning how to support young people in a non-mainstream way. Let's just put it that way. So I get really excited about this in being able to help people do this and, you know, parents stepping into this group and understanding their young people better, because it's not just the mainstream psychology of understanding your people, but how do you apply all of this in real life? So I'm very passionate about it and just passionate about, you know, if like say 5 people even come into the course to learn about young people and they go out and help out 10 people, I've just multiplied that by 5. Like that's 50 kids helped right there that I'm unable to reach all on my own. So that gets me really excited and really passionate about what I'm doing.
Wow, that's really exciting because I know that for years you've been passionate and working with children, and I know you have this beautiful, holistic, supportive approach, but I actually didn't realize that you were teaching others, empowering others to be able to go out and multiply what you know. That's exciting. And I assume when you're talking about a few years ago, that would be lockdown and...
Yes, 100%. I was actually physically like a youth worker at an organization supporting young people, and it was just quite, let's just say the real pandemic for me was their mental health.
Yes.
That is what I saw, and just the minimal support they were getting in the online space, especially because that's the only way they could connect. And a lot of them were shy to do it or really over it because of what school pushed for their online schooling. Like there was just so many layers affecting their mental health with those lockdowns, in particular in Victoria, in Australia. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was just, and it's exhausting. It was really exhausting. There's only so much one person can do. And the system at the time was like booked out 9 months in advance. Like I had young people starting to work with me that were self-harming and all sorts of things. And they couldn't get into like the Royal Children and the Monash like children's hospitals for 9 months for this issue. I'm like,
oh my gosh.
And a lot can happen in a week for a young person, let alone 9 months.
That's a big chunk of their whole life.
That is not okay. Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh. So when you say mainstream, and so you're counting yourself as not being mainstream.
Well, my degree is in social science and my majors were in psychology and sociology. And I love it. I love it all. I love understanding all the framework and the basis of the history of psychology. But the one thing I feel that psychology misses out on teaching is the human heart connection. It is so focused on proving itself as a science academically that it just forgets the human heart connection, and it looks at people as numbers rather than as humans with individual frameworks that are needed. Like nothing to me is a cookie cutter fit. You know, for me, if a child comes to see me, when a child comes to see me, it's very much about what is it that you need and where are you at and where am I meeting you at? Not, oh, you've got to fit into this framework and these labels and these sort of things. So it is just a little bit different. At 19, I went to my first psychologist. So that was my second year of uni. And ironically, it was all about child development. And I was going through parents separating and quite a volatile toxic home environment where there was a lot of fighting, a lot of yelling. And I went to a psychologist to receive support, and it actually set me backwards. It took me into past trauma that was not necessary at that time. And I went, screw this. I don't want to become a psychologist. I don't want to cause this to people. So that was the beginning of my journey. And in fact, after my degree, rather than doing anything further with that degree, I went and traveled, and then I got into the travel industry and events. And for a good 13, 14 years, I worked for airlines, I worked for conference organizers, I worked in the travel industry. And it wasn't until I became a mum and went through my own breakdown to have my breakthrough and get more tools around like coaching and neuro-linguistic programming and, some modalities in healing that I went, this is what I want to apply with children. This is what helped me. This is what helped my little guinea pigs, which are my boys. So I've got 2 boys that I practice all of this stuff on. Now they're 13 and 11. And that's what healed me, using this with understanding the framework of cognitive behavioral therapy and, the work of Freud and all of that, but bringing it in. How do we apply that in today's world and not looking at it as a problem, but rather of where am I right now? Where do I want to be? And how do I close that gap? Which is what I love about coaching so much.
Okay, so the tools you use, you've still got that basis of psychology, but you found it limiting and a bit cookie cutter and restrictive. So the tools that you've went and explored and integrated since then, neuro-linguistic programming and your life experience.
Life experience is the biggest thing for sure. But, training as a yoga teacher for young people and really getting into a lot of the somatic work.
That fascinates me, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And kids love that, and look, basically this is my whole philosophy in the work that I do. We're all starting off as little sprouts and we grow and we grow and we grow, right? And we collect different tools along the way. However, a lot of people get to their midlife crisis or a midlife awakening and, you can't grow anymore. That's it. That's kind of, and you go, holy cow, this growth has not worked for me. This is not working. And so you have to peel back so much and unlearn and relearn. How many people go through that in their 40s, 50s in particular? I'm like, why do we wait until that age to learn some of these skills that we can be giving to kids from a very young age where they're absorbing it better? About how do you speak to yourself? How do you self-care? How do you love on yourself? How do you shit on yourself? How you speak to yourself really matters from a very young age. But how many people speak really poorly to themselves and then in their 40s and 50s, they go, oh my gosh, I've been doing it wrong all these years and I have to learn to love myself and I have to catch myself speaking this way. The rewiring and relearning is starting to happen. I'm like, no, let's implement and plant all these things from a very young age. I mean, that's just one example, right? Or how do I respond to how people speak to me? Or, how do I deal with my own anxiety and stress? I'm responsible for me. It's not up to everybody else to make me feel better about myself. I make myself feel I'm the captain of me. So it's, give these tools from a very young age rather than waiting until, 40s and 50s to go, holy cow, I've got to relearn and I've got to restrip all my conditioning and learn everything from scratch again at that age. Have those tools from a very young age. And the amount of times I get people say, why aren't they teaching this at schools? I'm like, well, why aren't they teaching this at school? Teaching resilience and gratitude is what most schools do. And it's almost like just a tick off their list of we've done this well-being thing, but there's no embodiment. There is actual practice. It is shoved down kids' throats. So again, we're doing this thing and we're calling it that, but then the results are not matching. Yeah, for me, I'm very results-based and it is about the journey of embodying what you're learning. And we start that, with kids as young as, well, if I go in and do yoga in a kinder, if I go into a childcare center, or I've done this with kids as young as 4. And the younger you are, the less of that onion you've got, less of that crap you've got. So it's easier to just implement it. And the stuff that comes out of young people's mouth just blows me away. It's so beautiful. They really get it. They get this stuff.
I can't help thinking, with having some neurodivergent people in my family.
They're my favorite.
Do you have a different take?
You do.
Yes. Tell me about that. What do you think versus the medical diagnosis of it versus how you see it?
Neurospicy people, neurodivergent people, I call it my spectrumy friends because, it's such a big spectrum as well. It is really about meeting people where they're at. I don't give a shit if you're neurodivergent or not to a certain degree, in the sense of I just meet you where you're at. My big issue with it is when I get parents bring their kids to me, it's like, oh, that's Livy and she's autistic. And I'm like, that's Livy and I'll meet her where she's at. Like, she's not her label. Autism is part of how she is and how her brain works, but we all see the world in different ways, yeah? I think the thing that really gets to me the most is if a child is acting a certain way at school, a teacher has a lot less acceptance of them unless they come with that label. I'm like, why can't you just accept the child exactly where they are without that label and treat them accordingly? And the way that I see neurospicy people, okay, so this is our world. We're born into it. And these kids are growing up going, this, like, let's face it, our world's screwed up. The frequency of our world is screwed up. It is not great for these young people coming into it. And they're going, change this. This is not okay. Too much overstimulation, too much rah, 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 rah. Like, change it for us. And we're not. We're trying to shove them into a box and go, you must fit into this world. We're not responding to them and going, wow, we need to get back into nature a bit more. We need to be in touch with animals a bit more. We need a bit more grounding. We need all these things. And these children are a gift showing us that we fucked it up. Sorry for the French for the swear, but we really have screwed it up. And these children coming in are our opportunity to slow down, to think differently, to hold space differently, to really meet people where they're at and calm down our own frequencies. Why do neurodivergent children respond really well with animals and horses and trees and oceans and all of that sort of stuff? Because it is a beautiful natural frequency that they connect with. And this is what we must learn. But we are just too busy, too screwed up, too rushed to all those sort of stuff to stop and go, we can learn from them. And we need to slow down and we need to create that environment for them rather than try to shove them into a box where they sit still and they speak a certain way and they do all of this stuff. I call bullshit on that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because it's something I try to wrap my head around because something doesn't sit right with it being framed as a diagnosis and a disability. And
disability, I do struggle with that as well.
And I know some people want it to be that.
No, it's not about dismissing. I get you.
Just, everyone's got their own path. But I just feel like we're missing something in how we're viewing it. And the good out of it is that, okay, you get funding so you can pay for supports and that it creates this, like you were saying, this validity where you can have these discussions and it gives you a language, and maybe you shouldn't need to have that language, but it gives you a way to say, look, my child can't cope with these certain situations. What can we do? Right. And people can be more open and patient because of it. But
so what if you're not diagnosed on a spectrum but still have some issues? Is that less valid?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
To me, meet the child where they're at. What do all humans want? We want to be seen. We want to be heard. We want to be acknowledged. That's every single soul's deepest need. We all need that. So why aren't we giving that to children no matter where they're at?
I think we're making progress and we've got a long way to go, but at least we have this awareness that we can do better and we're looking for the tools. And maybe, I know for myself and where my child goes that they are doing the best that they can figure out how to do, and I'm actually quite impressed. But yeah, it's a matter of we need to know what the tools are.
100%. And how about also allowing ourselves to be taught the tools from these children, allowing them to tell us what they need rather than assuming and making an ass out of you and me, out of them, and going, this is what you need because I'm the adult and I know better. It's like, well,
exactly.
Like I work with so many children, they're quite disconnected with themselves because they've been told for 13, 15, 16 years, who are they? And it's like, well, who are you and who do you want to be? Don't wait until your 40s and 50s to crash and burn and go, oh my gosh, I've lived all this time not being who I want to be. Work that out from a young age. Who do you want to be? What do you want to step into? Like, what drives you? Understanding their values, understanding what's important to them. And that's going to grow and change over time, but we're giving them those tools from a very young age. So when they hit 20, they go, hang on a minute, what is actually really important to me? Is this aligned with what I want? Is this the people I want in my circle? What energy am I putting out into the world? Like all of these sort of tools from a very young age, helping them become who they want to be rather than what society tells them they should be.
And hopefully, I mean, it's quite slow, but, as we know, our school system.
It is so, but I have such a huge hope. It is now getting, especially since the lockdowns, more and more and more kids are going, rah, there's more diagnosis than ever, which I wonder sometimes it is misdiagnosis as well, because children in general are just going, this is not the world that I want to be in right now. This frequency is whacked. And this is where I invite the adults to really work on themselves, to regulate their emotions, to make friends with all their emotions as well. There's no good or bad emotions. Like anger is a valid emotion. It's what you do with that anger that matters. Yeah. Like go get a pillow, go scream in the woods, go stomp your feet, move that energy. It's an energy. But they don't allow, sadness. Like I had a long time ago, I had this mum bring her 8-year-old to me going, she gets sad a lot. Can you make her positive all the time? I'm like, you positive all the time? I'm like, I'm not positive all the time. Like what a load of crack, like you can't be just happy all the time. And I refer people, I love, love, love cartoons and the movie Inside Out, especially the first one and the second one too. They're amazing. But the first one, like joy just is always trying to make sadness happy. And then at the end of the movie understands there's a place for anger. There's a place for sadness. There's a place for all these emotions and what they do for us. It's a matter of how do we work with them rather than get into the toxic positivity. I'm just happy all the time. I'm just happy all the time. And then yet look at most people who are so happy all the time. They've died by suicide because there's a layer of being disconnected and not being able to express their sadness. And, I think of Robin Williams, for example, as the person who that happened with, like as a public figure, right? So that's not what we want for our children. We want to give them a balanced way of balancing their emotions. It's like, yeah, feel your anger, but how are you going to release that? It's not okay to punch your brother, but it's okay to grab a pillow and beat the bed up, yeah, and use that energy out of your.
We need to have things like that in schools as well.
100%, like go outside and stomp your feet, move your energy, and not just when the bell goes. And I understand we need a structure, but with schools in particular, the structure is so rigid at times. No wonder children are just not being able to cope because their system is going, this is not what I need. Like we're not responding to that. We're responding to
the behavior that's bothering us.
Well, okay, so this is what schools are really. And I feel so sorry for teachers, right? Because they are assessed. So you are my student and your grades reflect how well I've taught you. So the department can say I'm a good teacher. Stop.
Yeah.
And who's in that department? Like, are they even in that classroom? Do they know the kids? Do they know what's going on that level? No, it's some shanty old man or woman like making up these rules and they have no idea. And then the layers and the layers and the layers. I mean, we've got the biggest shortage of teachers in Victoria right now. In Australia wide, I believe, but in Victoria in particular. There's been times where they can't even find teachers to fill in classrooms because there's no teachers. What does that say, right?
It's one of the most important jobs right there
It
at the
is.
top. Yeah,
nurses and teachers are the most important jobs, in my opinion, in this country. For a first world country, we do not treat them right. We do not pay them enough. We do not respect their time enough and the pressures that are on them. And their degree, what you have to go to uni and do in a teaching degree, does not include OT, speech therapist, psychologist, all of the other stuff that they've had to become because they're managing behavior. They're not teaching anymore. And, the system needs a huge overhaul. I'm not here, though, to change it. I'm just here to create a new one and, plant all these seeds with children. Because even though I work with the children, I'm also working with the family, yeah? It's not like you just dump your child on me for 1 hour every 2 weeks and you don't know what's going on. Like I give you lots of tools. We communicate a lot. I need you to understand the psychology of what's going on for your child. I mean, it's just something as simple. Everybody knows the 5 love languages, right? Most people know the 5. You can go Google it. And if you don't know about it, go Google it, read up on it. It is an amazing tool to implement in your family and understand what is my love language, what is my child's love language, and how do we communicate that together? A lot of people know about it. So we've got the knowledge, and that's not power. What action are you taking? And then the embodiment that's happening underneath that. That's the important part.
Yeah. I think that's what's needed out there and that you're teaching really is one thing to know.
And a lot of people are like, I agree with you so much, Livia. Like we are changing, we are moving, we are progressing, we are becoming better on so many levels. Impatient me wants everything yesterday though. And I know my weaknesses that I've learnt to slow down, and bring my energy a bit more centered, going, this is evolution. Like, it can't just happen yesterday. It is evolution. It is a step by step. This is how growth happens, and every day like, I'm not the same as I was even 6 months ago. My growth has been huge, and what I had to surrender to and practice what I tell myself, and, practice with my own energy and how I respond to stress and all of it. And that's just in the last 6 months for me. And I'm 46 years young, right? So
it's a process.
Like, we're always growing and evolving. Absolutely. You know what I say with personal development? When people go, oh, would the healing ever stop? I'm like, no. Like no, because
when you're dead, it will.
Well, you're dead. I'm not ready to be dead, right? Like, I'm always going to be growing until I die. I mean, that's how I see it, right? It's that sort of process. But also, do you just have a shower once and never stink again? Like, do you eat one meal and never get hungry again? And to me, that's what personal development is. It's part of my life. It's part of my everyday. And I realize when I'm not doing it and I'm not applying my little rituals, or I'm not doing my own growth, well, shit hits the fan, because that's my body and my life going, hang on a minute, you're out of alignment. Come back. What do you need to learn? What do you need to grow? What do you need to do now? Every single time, I promise you, I'm my biggest guinea pig, and so are my children. So,
which is great, because that's embodiment.
I know this works.
And the other thing, what you're saying, it reminds me of one of the things I always think is that children, like you say, are our teachers, but especially the preschool age. The whole thing about not avoiding emotions but feeling them, they are the role model for that. They will have a tantrum and they will scream, and then it's out of their body, and then the next minute they're totally in their joy, and they don't need to meditate or think, be in the present moment, notice the rustling under, they don't need to do anything. They are just in the moment without even having to think about it. And the fact that tends to be a preschool thing, is that an indication of what happens when they go to school? Is that a thing we would keep?
Well, it's not just because of school, but from about 5 onwards, what starts happening is they start switching on that behaviors have consequences. And, we start caring as humans from about 7 onwards. It's really like those first 0 to 7 is where your blueprint and what we call belief system is being created, right? And we used to think that was it. And then after that, like, we've now learned through neuroplasticity that can be changed, and the neural pathways can be changed, and we're not stuck with that, right? But what happens then as well is we start going, oh, it's not just mum and dad. It's not there's people that are looking at me. Oh, like, what reactions am I getting here? And we start becoming a lot more self-conscious and a lot more self-aware. And that happens to coincide with school age, like starting school. So you've been to the bigger world, especially under 4. They don't give a shit because they don't have that awareness. They don't have that growth, like that brain capacity to go. It's just what they need, and they're very responsive to what their bodies need. So one thing I teach in yoga in particular with parents, wanting them to understand this, like, one thing, right? So there's, like, I call it piggy in the mud, when you're on your back and you're rolling and massaging your back kind of thing. Now think about, especially under 2, when they get on the floor and throw a tantrum and they're thrashing their body everywhere. That is seen as unacceptable by society. See, because that's the meaning we put to certain behaviors, good or bad, the stupid label. What if we were to look at that kid and go, well done, darling, on regulating your vagus nerve, your spine, which is where your vagus nerve runs down, all of this area here. And when you're massaging the spine like that, you're regulating your feelings. So even for adults who are listening to this, you're having a really hard time and you're out of your body, get on the floor and pretend you're a piggy in the mud and roll on your back and see for a minute after that how much better you'll feel. So children do it naturally, but yet we label it as bad. Oh, you're just having a tantrum. You're embarrassing me. Get off the floor. Like, this is bad. And yet they're doing what's natural, what's good for their body, but we shut it down because we're the adults and we know better. But if we actually stop and go, what is my child doing right now? What do they need? How can I hold that space for them so they're doing it safely? That's the most important thing I feel as a parent I need to do. They're not hurting anybody. They're not smacking or, like, hurting anybody. See how that changes how we look at that one thing? That's just one thing.
Yes. And when you look at that and you realize, oh, hang on, and have some self-awareness and go, I'm uncomfortable that they're doing that, and I'm worried about what people will think, and start to unpack that and realize how often we care about what people think is, we're unconsciously, without realizing, could you lie on the floor and do that in public in front of people?
Yeah. And under 4, they don't have that awareness. They don't have that,
Yeah, I know. But sometimes I admire that they walk around wearing sparkles and sequins and and I think, why don't we stop doing that? We should do that all our lives. I think,
100%, because we're labelled as weirdos,
yeah.
and we're labelled as misfits, and we're labelled as also. And now there's some people that continue to do that, and look at how they are ostracised or left out. Or this is what I mean about why can't we just meet people where they're at? Because there's people polished in their suits and everything, and they're still assholes. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
funny how as society we just put people in certain categories. And we do that for our own safety, so our brain can understand that construct. And I understand that. It's so the nervous system can feel safe with certain meaning that we put to certain things. But I'm just challenging that. And I'm just challenging that within people, going, where's your growth? And let's meet people where they're at. And that, like, my bigger kind of worldwide thing of just, let's move it away just from the kids as well. How many times do we put people in categories and labels where it divides us? I'm a Labor and you're a Liberal, like politically, or I'm an anti this and I'm a pro this, or, and all we're doing is just divide and divide and divide. And I see the world is going through a little bit of that psychological war of divide. And again, it's like, can we speak into the unity? Can we speak into what we want to see? Can we speak into, like, I'm Middle Eastern and you're Jewish, and can we still have a respectful conversation and communication around what that means for us without slandering each other and without getting into the divide that is already being created in the world? Because if we keep doing that, the same shit's going to keep happening. We're not doing it any different. So again, I can't change the world, but I can create a new one in the way that I behave and that I act and that I speak. Am I always going to get it right? Hell no. But when I'm aware I didn't get it right, I shift and I fix. You know what I mean? Like,
I feel like that is a movement, and there's waves of people sort of stepping into that, and there's a heavy, horrific price that's happening.
If I speak to this to certain people, so my background's Lebanese. So I was born in Lebanon. I came out here when I was 10. And I guess that's why I do the work I do, because I wish I had that mentor and that person when I came here. Age 9, 10 is called the coming of age. It's a really pivotal age where children pull away from families and start creating their own identity. And they start, that's when most kids, don't believe in Santa and the tooth fairy and all of that, because of that awakening that they have of, I'm separate to my family, I'm separate to my parents, and who am I now going to become? Yeah. That's a big kind of step in our evolutions as humans. And so I came here at that very pivotal age, not speaking a word of English. Back then in Lebanon, it was French or American school, and Mum picked French school. So French and Arabic were my first languages. And I went through hell for the first 5 years being here. The amount of bullying.
5 years, wow.
For the first 5 years, learning English and just finding my feet with friends, with like culture, with, dealing with racism. I got beaten up because somebody thought I was Muslim, and, like all sorts of things. Like, it was really horrendous, actually. And I wish I had that mentor at that age. That wasn't an option back then at all. Whereas now in schools, they are implementing different mental programs and, different well-being programs, which is an amazing thing. Like, I've got to give schools that in supporting our young people. But yeah, it is a big reason of why I do what I do, and wishing that I had that when I was younger and wanting to give that to other kids now. Children are so smart. Our teenagers are so smart. Like, some of the conversations I have with them and what they're aware of what's happening in the world, because they are so digitally aware now. Everything's at their fingertips. Like, they can access stuff so much easier than we could at their age, right? So they're so much more open, and the conversations that I have with them, about these movements. Like, I've got a 14-year-old, he'll speak Marxism to me, and socialism and capitalism and all the isms. We have amazing conversations. He's such a wise old soul, and he doesn't even fit into his friendship groups like he wants to, because he's such an old soul of, being so aware of these sort of things. So meeting him where he's at, and just, giving him questions to have a think about, and validating him and holding that space and listening to him. He has such clues about what is going on in the world. And for me as his mentor, it's like, where are we going to guide your energy? Where do you want to put your energy? What are you wanting to create? So yes, I agree with you. There is a movement to that. But I know also for me, if I speak out about certain things within my own culture, You know, if people are very anti-Israel, for example, I will get shot down if I speak for Israel. And I have Jewish friends, if they speak anti-Israel, or not so much anti-Israel, but if they speak for Palestine or the Middle East, then that means they're anti-Israel as well. And they get shot down for it. And we are together navigating a way where we can use our voice and talk into the unity.
Obviously, there's a lot of censorship and all sorts of issues like that. But I find, like, if you're looking on TikTok or YouTube or certain things where the algorithm will help you find people who are open and ready. Like, there can be some criticism that, you know, okay, you create your echo chamber and never see other people's point of views. And you have to be aware of those sort of things and check yourself and have some self-awareness. But that's the way you can be aware and find people who might feel like a safe space to be able to find other people you can unite with on certain things. But being careful not to do that as an us versus them.
100%. And it's not an us versus them at all. Like, for me, it's not. It's just about speaking to the unity. And if people are going like, how would you do that? I'm like, because that's what embodiment is. You know, how I mentioned those steps that I take. It's like you've got your awareness. Then with that awareness, it's just an awareness, right? And then with that awareness, 50% of whatever is going on for you is solved because you've got that awareness. And then you can go and source all your knowledge about that awareness. And I always say, look at all knowledge, not just biased knowledge of proving getting evidence for what you believe is right. But then you take the action and then you embodiment. And that embodiment is where that really happens. So I'm quite embodied in my unity and what that is for me and how I practice that. And whenever something comes up where I want to justify, you know, maybe how Lebanon retaliated or what's happening there, I'm like, well, is it really, you know, is that really true? And how do I know this is true? So I would challenge my own self in my own biases that come up with my own conditioning. And I come back to the question, is that unified? Again, with the labels, let's just say, you know, I'm Jewish and you're a Middle Eastern, Arab, whatever. If we took that away and we didn't know that about each other, does that change anything? Do you know what I mean? Like, we could be the absolute best friends and we bring that in. Does that change anything? Does that change who we are? But this is what's been conditioned in us for centuries now. It's like you belong to this side and you belong to this side, you know, and take it back to the Nazis and the Jews and all of that back then. Like, it is so conditioned in us. I mean, you just have to watch that movie, The Boy with the Striped Pajamas.
I don't know that one.
Oh my gosh, make sure you have a full box of tissues when you watch that movie.
Okay.
It is so beautiful. And that to me is children, again, because children do not know and hang on to this shit. And again, you know, in certain areas they are being taught this, but really they don't understand it. They don't embody the hatred that adults have gone years kind of having. But in that movie in particular, it's like, I won't spoil it for you, but it's a German and, you know, I think he was Polish, the younger boy, and they became friends through the concentration camp.
Oh my goodness.
The German was free to come and go, but the young boy was in a concentration camp and they became best friends through the wire fence. And look, even now I get like,
oh my goodness, yeah,
all about it. And I'm just like, and this is how we are. Like, you know, if that was you and me, it's like we would just be connecting because we had a synergy and how kids are. We wouldn't go, oh, you're black and you're Jewish and you're this and you're that and I'm not going to like you kind of thing. And I don't have any of that shit.
So, I mean, yes. I guess I'm thinking of people like Anita Moorjani or anyone who's, you know, had a near-death experience and comes back and they say, oh, we are, when we go, we don't take any of those, we're none of those labels.
None. She's one of my favorite people, actually. She really taught me, reading her book in particular and listening to some of her YouTube videos. When my father passed away and 6 months later, one of my best friends, I was 40 and she passed away leaving 2 boys behind as well, really rocked me. Like going, oh my gosh, like death was so in my face then. And I really had to look at that. And that book, Dying to Be Me, highly recommend. Like, it was amazing. It really helped me understand death, look at death, what happens to us. And I'm no longer afraid of it. I'm sad when someone goes, but it's like, okay, your journey's done. See, now you've become perfect. You're gone. You've hit your growth. You've hit your perfection and there's no more to do for you. And our souls leave. So yeah, that's a way. And thanks to her. So it's funny you mentioned her, actually.
I don't know why in particular her book. At the time, I didn't realize it would have such an impact, but I just keep referring to it.
But it's so powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, I love it. And so, How are you doing that? How are you feeling? Like knowing that you have that Lebanese background and what's going on there?
A mixture of emotions. Yeah, I was talking to a friend about this the other day, and it's like, and this is again brings me back to, will you ever stop the healing? And it's like, well, no, because you don't do it all at once and that's it. It's like that shower. You don't just have the one and it's done. It doesn't work like that, So when we came here, I was 10. If I heard a balloon pop, would I hide under a table? Absolutely, because I had that trauma from bombs going off when I lived there, right? Like I lived in the war when I was younger. So I remember it quite well. And we're very blessed to have survived quite a bit and quite blessed to have come out here. Yeah. So, when COVID was happening, and that was only 4 years ago, and they had like helicopters at 1 a.m. near my house going, and the whole house shaking. Did my body react to that? My nervous system definitely did. See, I thought I'd healed all of that, but my nervous system, a book that is a must read if you're really interested into this stuff, it's called The Body Keeps Scores. It is amazing, and it shows you even like the PTSD and how trauma is stored in the body from people that have even gone to war, like veterans and all of that sort of stuff. It is a fascinating read of understanding what our body score, like the body keeps in the nervous system, right? Now, intellectually, I knew there was not going to be a bomb coming, and I knew I was in Australia, and I didn't go hide under my bed like I would have when I was younger. But my body still responded to that noise because it was the noise I would hear in war. And even now recently, like with everything that's happening there, my mum is actually in Lebanon at the moment, coming back in a couple of weeks. They're safe. They're not in an area where it's being impacted. And I just keep on going back to that when it's our time, it's our time. So whether my mum was there or here or my family was there or here, like if it's our time, it's our time. And there's not much I can control about our time. But what we can do is live safely, but live life to the fullest. And my mum and stepdad are living their life to the fullest. I get a lot of joy seeing my stepdad, who's full Aussie, wanting to be in Lebanon more than Australia, believe it or not, because he loves the culture. He loves getting to know the locals and going downstairs and having coffee with them and playing cards. And he's been welcomed fully. Like the hospitality is huge, and it's beautiful to see that. Believe it or not, there's so much more freedom over there in so many different ways that we don't understand that here. Like, this is what I mean. So because it's a country of war, we make that an inferior country, like it's less than, but there's so much beauty to it that we also don't realize, right? Do I feel sadness? Yes. Do I feel anger? Yes. They're all energy needing to move through my body. So I do my exercises to move that. I cry, I jump, I dance. You'll see a lot of photos on my socials about me almost weekly, 2-3 times a week, with or without my kids, going out in nature or doing activities to move that energy, because I make friends with all my emotions and they're all part of me and they're all going to come up. Do I feel relief? Do I feel happiness? All of it. But what I'm focusing most of my energy on with what's happening in the Middle East, we can't change it. So this was happening when I was below 10, and I'm now 46, 36 years later, the war is still there. Like, this just shows you how society needs to really evolve, and we just keep on repeating the same shit. And as you said before, we don't take any of this shit with us to the other side. So I didn't even understand that whole conflict, to be honest with you, of like, what, you're fighting over land and then what? You're all killing yourselves and not even getting to enjoy that land anyway.
So how many billions do they need? I just don't understand.
It's all about the shadow values, understanding the shadow values of greed and power. Man has always been addicted to power. It's not even so much money, but it's
yes, that
power.
makes more sense. Yeah.
And what we get from power. Again, see, it's a shadow value of us that if we're not connected with that, we're going to just want more and more and more. I mean, just watch villains in movies. It really depicts that of, they're not, the baddies, they think they're doing the right thing, but they are just filled with that power, and that more power just gives you hunger for more power and control. And we can do that in a much better way. So the lesson for me is to maintain my energy and not go rant about, oh, fuck Israel, or fuck this, or, like, rah, I just want to get back at this side and I don't care. Because a lot of people would do that because they're just taking sides and, they need to fight for that side. For me, it's about bringing my energy going. Reality is there's a war between all of these people, and all of these people are taking their part in it. I can't control that. Like, me getting angry or ranting about Israel, let's say, as a Lebanese person, what is that going to change? Nada, zero, zilch. What I can do is go, where am I going to put my energy? How am I going to speak to this? How do I show up with my Jewish friends? How do I show up with my Muslim friends? How do I show up with my different background friends? Yeah. Without seeing them as their label, without seeing them as the culprits of that culture or religion. Because I speak to all my Jewish friends. Do any of them want this? Hell no. None of us want this.
How do you speak to people without them not seeing you as a label?
That's not my issue. It's their issue. I just have to stay centered in my heart. And if somebody is triggered, if I am fully in my heart and I'm not raging and ranting at them to cause that fight, if I stay fully in my heart and in that energy and practice that, that's become my practice, then, they can't. If somebody's ranting or raging at me, my response now is to just zip it.
Mm-hmm.
Just zip it. And because that's their shit. It's got nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
And then I can decide to go, thank you so much for your time. I'm walking away now. Or I just stand there and hold that space for them because they've got so much anger and energy in them that needs to move. And where are they? I'd rather them yell it at me than go friggin' stab someone with it. That anger needs to go somewhere. So it's about learning how to release that anger in a positive way rather than in a destructive way. See how it brings me back to what I was talking with the children? But this is what I mean. Adults are learning this and adults don't even know this. So why aren't we teaching them from a very young age?
We're all children.
We are all children, aren't we? We have younger ones because they're less of a layered onion to deal with.
You mentioned something in one of your lives because you've got to set yourself a personal challenge to do a bunch of lives. And you said something about protests don't work. What did you mean by that? And what do you think people can do that is helpful for if they're really concerned about the horrors that they see?
Okay, you can go to protests to show that support. I get it. I get why people would want to do that. But look, I'm just going to use something for you. And this is very NLP in that. And I've been criticized for this before, and that's okay. And that's really okay because people don't fully understand it. They haven't learned it, but I just want to plant a seed of this is how powerful our mind is. If I tell you, do not think of a pink elephant, your mind will think of a pink elephant. I mean, this is so widely used. I'm not making this up. This is not my discovery. This is I'm showing you evidence of how the brain works, right? If I tell your brain, do not think of a pink elephant, you will think of a pink elephant. So if I say, I don't want fighting in the Middle East, it's going to continue, like my energy is going to keep on being focused on that. When we go to protest, look, there are I've been to a couple of protests over certain things, but again, I've chosen the protests I go to where there's unity rather than we're fighting this thing. And we're in that energy and we're fighting this thing. It's a battle. It's a fight. What's the energy around it? So even, Mother Teresa would never go to a protest. She's like, I pray for peace because the energy of protesting against war and praying for peace, just feel that within your own body. What feels better?
Yeah.
What is going to get, so what can people start doing for themselves? If every single person on this planet took fucking full radical responsibility of how they show up, how they speak, how they treat others, where they put their money, where do you consume your stuff? Like fucking start looking at the way you behave, the way you speak before you go out there and have a go at anything out there. Yeah. If you are mad about, for a lot of the protesters in the city, like you're mad about Israel bombing whatever, their missiles or whatever, or Hezbollah doing their thing. I'm just using that as one example. How do you fight in your own life? Do you fight dirty? How do you communicate with your loved ones or with your not so loved ones? Yeah, before you take it out there and go rah, rah, rah at something, how are you showing it up in your own life? Yeah. If you can't answer that, I'm sorry, go look in the mirror and start it at home. You want the world to change? Go start in your own backyard. Go start in your own house first. And watch the world.
Yeah, not everyone draws that parallel, but I guess we're on a journey. But, they'll think, look, I'm just arguing with you, but that's not the same thing as a war over there. But it's basically how we create a...
No, absolutely not. If I would speak to my cousins over there, it's going to be different, right? But this is you're asking me, how do we create that ripple effect? Like what can we do about a war? I mean, come on, have we not always felt guilty about starving children in Africa? From a very young age, how many people our age are like, oh, you better finish your meal. There's starving kids in Africa. Like I'm going to be able to send them that meal, right? And there's been starving kids in Africa since I was born. Can we do anything about that per se? Like, can I go in and change the continent of Africa and starving children and what goes on there? No, I cannot. But what I can do is in my everyday life, where do I spend my money? What companies do I support? What do they do? When I traveled to Africa, how did I choose to behave? How did I choose to respond to the culture? You know what I mean? Like that's where our power lies. And if every single person did that, and rather than going on the outside, what can I change? Go within and change you. When we heal, the world heals. One by one becomes that 700 million, whatever, billion people living on this planet, one by one. And we're all going to have different things that we're passionate about and different causes and different things that impact our life. Yeah, so for me, it may be the war in Lebanon, but for you, it may be, I don't know, what's happening in Uluru or what's happening somewhere else. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Everybody's got their thing. What's happening in the Ukraine or Russia, I don't know. But it does come back to the same thing of how you heal you. You come back to you. What are your actions? What are you saying? What is the energy that you are infusing into it? Because that's how it grows. The more we feed something, protest, the more that grows. That's what it becomes. And then what happens is that divide. It's not unity.
Yeah, exactly. I think you have to follow your heart. And I do believe in the concept of being for something rather than against something. So be for peace rather than anti something.
Exactly, Ryan. You see that energy in your body, don't you? Like that's what I just invite people to do is feel that energy in your body. Say it to yourself. I'm against this. I'm for peace or I'm for this. Feel that energy just shift in your own body. This is somatic stuff. You know, in the beginning when I said about the yoga and the somatic stuff, that's where it all comes back to. Feel that in your body. And that parameter would never really lead you astray because it's not then all just here.
I think one thing that's come out of this for me, what's happened in the Middle East in the last year anyway, for me, it's woken me up as far as how much we're lied to, you know, and I feel like you knew that already. So that's why we have to be patient with people who still don't know because we get there in our own time.
Meet people where they're at. Imagine if I tried to shove this down your throat. This is another thing with some of the movements happening out there where I think also they're failing a little bit is because we're trying to shove things down people's throat when their nervous system is not ready to hear it. And you had to go through your own evolution and your own awakening to go, holy cow, I'm being lied to. Like we are being lied to. And then you'll start different like you're creating a new neural pathways and different things are going to be firing off in your brain and you might go down your own rabbit holes to get educated. Do you know what I mean? You've got the awareness, you're gaining the knowledge, you're going to take whatever action and the embodiment will happen. That is just a really simple step in all of our evolution. Some people do not get to the embodied part. They just speak it and sprout it, but they're not living it. And this is what I'm asking people to do is you want peace, live peace. I can't say to myself, I want peace, but then I will attack my Jewish friends about what their country is doing or what Israel's doing. That doesn't work. I have to practice being peace if that's what I want.
I think you have to have some sort of faith to be able to do that because I know a lot of empathetic people who go, but I can't watch this happen. I can't watch what they're doing. I can't.
You can't. I don't watch it. I actually wake up in the middle of the night, Liv. Like there's been times, so when Lebanon a few weeks back, the north got hit and I didn't know about it. But at 4 a.m., around the time that it got hit, I woke up with my heart racing. I'm going to get a bit emotional. But my heart was racing and I'm like, what the hell's going on? And I had to call my mum straight away. And she let me know that they just got hit in the north, but it was still far away enough from her. So this is what I'm saying to you. I still go through my emotions. I don't disregard that feeling, right? And the nervous system, the body keeps scores. It really does. And how do I deal with that? It's like gratitude was like, okay, mum's okay. I pray for the souls that weren't okay because that was their time and there's nothing I can do about that. And then I just do my practice of coming back to my heart center. It is a friggin' practice. Like I told you, you don't have your shower once and that's it. I do this daily. It is part of my practice. Otherwise, I will get derailed. I would because it is so easy to buy into the hatred and the us against them and all that bullshit. It can be really easy to buy into that. But I also know that's not true. I have been shown over the years. I've lived in the US for a year and I love saying this. So me, Lebanese, with a Jewish friend and a German friend, went out to a bar. That's it. Like this was literal. Like we used to go out and party all the time together. You know, my friend from the Czech Republic, my friend from Germany and me, well, from Australia, but Lebanese. And that's it. And we were 20 something and we loved each other deeply and had so much fun together. And none of that shit came into the equation of us being together.
One thing I realized a few years ago, as far as labels go, is I realized that people like, what's her name? AOC, the politician, and
I don't know names.
Anyway, the American one, and basically, Jennifer Lopez, and basically Latin American people in America are considered coloured and they're considered brown. And I have always related to Latin American people as being like my cousin because I'm European Latin. I'm Portuguese, so I feel like I'm sort of, which is right next to Spain. We're basically the same DNA. We just went over to the Americas and I feel like they are the same pretty much, like DNA-wise and colouring and stuff. And I'm like, oh, am I coloured? Like, what is my category? And it's just so it's not real. Yeah, because for some reason Europeans, I don't think officially, in inverted commas, categorized as coloured, but we are the same colour.
But isn't it funny, even within Europe, like Turkey is Europe, but really it's part of the Asia, like, so it's part of Europe continent, but really culturally it's part of the Asia or Middle Eastern. Like, even though I'm Lebanese, I'm Asian. Like, that's part of the Asian continent, but I'm not Asian. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's really interesting just how we need to categorize stuff. And we can have another segment just about this. Like, when I lived in England, people, from India, they would refer to them as Asians. And to me, it's like, oh, wow, like in Australia, to me, Asians are Chinese and Koreans, but really India is part of the Asian continent. Like, it's just really interesting also what part of the world we're in, especially when it comes to nationalities, cultures, and skin colour, what we're labelled and categorised as. But again, it's a societal construct in order for us to feel safe fitting into some sort of box. That's where people get their safety from, is fitting into a box. And then you've got the misfits who don't fit into anything, yeah? But then they still need that label, the misfits, right?
Oh, all right. I feel like there's so much we could talk about, but maybe
you are such a treasure, my darling. You are such a treasure. What beautiful conversation. And you started it off with, what are you passionate about? Now you can see where all my passions come from. Eh?
You are so passionate. I love it. You have really deep, wonderful, heart-based values, which I really, really admire. Is there anything I haven't asked you or any message that you want to share before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I just want to be really clear for anybody that's listened to this that I am not telling you to discount your feelings of rage, anger, or whatever might come up for you. There's going to be a spectrum of emotions around whatever topics that are influencing your life right now or world events that are influencing your life right now. I actually do invite you to speak to those feelings that are coming up, but rather than taking them out on something, it's just being aware, really aware of your own energy and how you're feeding whatever problem is in your life. Let's just leave it at that. Whatever problem is in your life, you are responsible for the energy that you feed it. So pay attention to that energy and come back and assess, shift, create whatever it is needed so that it's serving you for your higher good rather than feeding the very thing you don't want.
Beautiful. And how can people get more of you?
So on my socials, I hang out on Facebook quite a bit. I don't know why, because it's not my favorite place, but it has all my favorite people that I can connect easily there with. So just Marilou Coombe or Empowered Youth Coaching for my page, which I've only just started because I did get hacked about maybe 8 months ago and I lost everything, like my 3,500 followers that I'd built on my other page, my groups, everything I was denied access to. But it's been beautiful restarting and recreating. See, the reality is that shit happened. Did I get angry about it? Yes, I did. But then I went into action mode and beautiful things have come out of that. So yeah, mainly on there and on Instagram, Empowered Youth Coaches as well.
We'll pop that all in the show notes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my darling.
Stay fearless. Hit subscribe and let's dive into the next episode.